She actually talked to me, man.
Get out of here.
Oh, yeah.
I've really gotten into the bad habit of asking a huge amount of questions lately.
It's just a question between friends. You know?
You go to one of those cappuccino places, they let you just sit there.
What are we gonna do there? Talk?
We can talk.
I'll go if I don't have to talk.
She actually talked to me, man.
We're always filming, right? Isn't that? We're always filming. Well, welcome to episode number 1, I guess, of my apparently brand new 5 Great Questions podcast, which I have no idea will be, one episode or 29 or more. At this point, I have many more than 5 questions, but I still love the title, and I want to honor my first instinct from years ago of thinking of this idea basically to get people to think with using questions that they don't normally hear. I believe most of us get asked questions like, when will you be home? Did you pick up the groceries? Did you send that email in? These are all questions, but they're necessary, but they're not very exciting. And I find as I go through life, I find that most people don't get asked interesting questions about themselves very often. And so that's the purpose of this podcast, and I'm hoping that you will help. If you are listening, you hear today's episode, and you think, well, I have a great question, or a great answer to a question, then you'll be able to email me. It's in the notes. My email is already there, and would love to hear your response, and we'll go from there. So without further ado, welcome to episode 1. And please welcome my guest, a longtime friend and film collaborator, Don Johnson.
Hey, Alden.
Woohoo. Yes.
Great to be here.
Thank you. How does today find you?
I am doing all right. I've just been contemplating the question you sent me here just briefly. And first of all, congratulations. Great topic, great show. I'm excited to hear all the rest of them. But I also find it fascinating. I've been thinking about this topic a little bit more than this is going to sound weird, but I've been thinking about it more than I had realized I had been thinking about it, actually. And that'll make sense in a minute when you give me my question.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we've got a lot of rain here in Northern California, but I'm in an enclosed secret location now that seems to be doing pretty well. So the rest of the country is, rescheduling playoff football games and figuring out where Taylor Swift is sitting, but versus the players on the field. But you and I are gonna hopefully have a good discussion here in our enclosed bunkers.
Exactly.
So as with every episode, what I hope to do is send you, as you received about 20 minutes ago, 5 great questions. And the best part is, it's up to you. I don't mind which question you think you have the best answer for or the best story. And I think hopefully that's where I'm going to focus, is which of the 5 questions I emailed to you, which question instantly sparks inside your mind and your memory the best story, and not just the best answer that you think is right or wrong or the rightest answer, but the best story. So that's what we're going to go. Have you received your questions, Don Johnson?
I got them. Thank you very much. And I have made my decision.
All right. Is this your final answer?
Yeah. I want to talk about the cell phone question. So maybe, do you want to phrase it in a particular way?
Sure. Let me read. So one of the questions I sent you was, how did you meet your spouse without a cell phone?
Yeah.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah. So that is an important story in my life. Possibly. I mean, it's one of the most important. But let me preface it with the whole cell phone thing, because this week I have been thinking a lot about the role that cell phones now play, and a couple of things really tripped it. I did a quick trip to the Upper Midwest last weekend. Okay, so I was in Chicago and Detroit. Flew in on Thursday, flew home on Sunday. So this is a quick trip, and I drove between the two cities. So I flew into Chicago, did a thing there, did some filming, jumped in my rental car, drove to Detroit, did some filming there, and then flew home. And what struck me about the whole thing, I mean, I admit there's a certain grayness to the upper Midwest that I'm not in the winter that
Yes.
I'm not a fan of. And I grew up in the Midwest, so I get it. But but I'm not. I mean, I've been to Chicago, Detroit before. It's not like I'm unfamiliar with the cities. But it really struck me on this trip that if I did it all on my phone. I realized as I flew out that I could have done the whole trip and not realized where I was at all. Like it could have been anywhere in America, right? I get out and it's a nondescript airport and you follow your phone to where the rental car is and you get in your car and I follow my phone to where my hotel is, which looks just like every other hotel in the country. I get in my car, I drive in the morning to a house that looks like every other house in the world. I mean, that's not exactly true. I mean, it was and I went away from it thinking, I could have done that whole trip, go to 2 major American cities, and if you hadn't told me where I was, there was nothing, because of the phone, I didn't need to learn anything about it. I didn't need to know anything particular. I just followed my phone along the highways to a stopped there, got out, followed my phone again. And it was really different than how we used to travel, right? Yeah. Like you had to know places. You had to look at a map. And you and I have traveled a lot around the country, and we do traveling a little bit different. Obviously, that was a little bit of a different trip than if you and I. Yeah. But the phone has made traveling just this weird thing, I think. Okay, well, so that's my first thing. I mean, add on to that if you want, but that was my first.
Well, I just think it's interesting that now you can even choose your voice. So if the phone is telling you where to go, you could theoretically choose I'm sure there's an app for this. You could choose a Midwestern voice to direct you. Yeah. Or if you were in. Or
an
New
Australian voice or
exactly.
something. Yeah, that's
exactly.
Right.
So one of my friends has a real great quote a few years ago. He said that the summary of the internet is before there was the internet, you basically had to know a guy.
That's right. You had to, and you had to interact with people.
Yeah.
I could have done this whole trip really without interacting with people. In fact, the one. You know how these trips go, though. There's always little roadblocks. There's always little things that go wrong. And you and I have had some weird experiences at rental car. And the same thing happened again. Okay, same thing happened again. I got to my rental car. This just shows you again. And I'm not a Luddite. Okay, this has just been thinking about it. I'm going to get to my relationship story here in a second, but. Something was wrong with the card, and it wasn't letting me rent my car. And I go online, and I pull up my app, okay, and it says, there's plenty of credit there, okay, there should be no problem.
This is while you're standing in line.
Yeah,
I mean, with the pressure, and you're already on a tight timeline.
Yeah, right. Thankfully, there wasn't a huge line behind me, and the person. Anyway, the card's not working, and I know what to do because I know if I phone that number, it's not going to be helpful. So I'm trying all of the tech things first, right? All of the I try different apps. I go online, anyway. Finally, it's not. I'm thinking, all right, I guess I'm going to have to phone the number. Well, you know how that went. I phoned the number, and I talked to the person. Actually, finally got a live person. And it turns out, it's very clear what had happened, that there had been a flip in one of my accounts somewhere where the routing number on a payment had been flipped with the account number. You know what I'm talking about? Like it's just you can see, it's very obvious that this is what happened. It didn't really affect anything in the real world except that the algorithm had caught it at some point, right? Like it had caught it, and it had frozen my account. Because those two, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, well, you can see, right, ma'am, you can see what happened. You can see that the account numbers just got flipped right there. And she said, yeah, I do see that. I said, well, let's just flip that around again, right? Or something. Nope,
Yeah.
no, I can't do that. Well, why can't you do that? Well, because it's in the system now. The computers have completely locked you. And there's literally nothing I can do once the computers lock you out. She said, you're going to have to wait several days.
I mean, if you were writing this script, you couldn't have written it any better as how do we get this guy
And
off
so I
track at the
explained the
beginning?
situation. I said, I am currently, 1,800 miles away from home on a business trip needing my car. Okay? That's my human situation here. Yeah. And if we could just flip those numbers or cancel that, whatever that is altogether, just exit out, we'd all go on our merry way. Life could... Do you understand? I'm stranded in this foreign, in this town. Well, nothing I can do, sir. Nothing, absolutely nothing I can do because the computers have locked you out. And I'm not going to tell you the rest of the story on air, Alden, because it's a typical Don and Alden story how it turned out, and it's not for public consumption.
Yes.
But I will share it off the air. It all worked out in the end,
gosh.
but it required some human ingenuity. Okay, so that was my first story. The second story is a young adult that I know, friend of a kid of a friend of ours. Let's put it that way. I'm 50 something, so we have. If I'm talking about young adults, it's either my high school kids or people that I've been pastoring, or friends of kids, right? I hear the story that the young man has a girlfriend. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Okay. And the guy's sharing, friend of mine is sharing, and he kind of had this weird look in his eye, I'm like, oh, you don't like her? And she's like, well, no, that's not it. He's like, that's not it. It's not that we don't like her. I'm not sure we've ever met her. And then here was the rest of the thing. He's like, I'm not sure my son has really met her either. And here's the thing. I mean, I think at one point years ago, they had actually met, but the whole boyfriend-girlfriend thing has happened completely over texting and over online interaction. Okay? The guy lives in the Southeast. She lives in the Pacific Northwest. And this relationship has been completely cyber. Okay?
Wow.
And so my friend and I are both like, okay, how does that work? And I'll tell you, I mean, I work with, I'm a high school teacher, right? Like I work with young adults. The phone, and this is one of the reasons I picked this story, the phone has absolutely transformed the way people relate with each other and what they understand relationships to be. And not in a good way. Okay. Now I understand that it's something like 80% of people who get married now meet online. I mean, it's a crazy stat. It's a crazy high stat. And I get it. So I understand that relationship, like that is the world we live in. But I do really think we have lost something, and it has changed the way that people interact. And my stories, as I'll share here whenever. If you want me to start it, is one indication of the different how we used to do it differently, right? How we used to do it differently.
Yeah, I think it's a reminder on the low end of the action spectrum. On the low end, it's if you are an adult with any interaction with teenagers right now, just get them to meet up in person. If you can impact that in any way, even if your group of kids is just your kids and their friends. If you are an adult listening right now and you want to know how to change the world, I'm being serious. Whatever teenagers you know, give them time together. It may not change the world right now, but it will change their world for the better, and it may be all you can do.
No, it's our school. We know they all have phones, but we're very strong about no phone usage while you're on campus. Okay, you have to go to a special spot on campus if you're going to have your phone out. And what's fascinating is even, it's not a huge school, but I love to watch at lunchtime when everybody's together and none of them can be on phones, how they interact with each other. And it takes, admittedly, if you can see the new kids when they come in, how difficult that is for them, a lot of them.
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
to have social interaction. And I get it, you're new school, I get it. But in general, kids have a hard time now socially interacting. But once they do, I mean, it's really an amazing thing. So that's great advice, Alden. It's great
An
advice.
eye-opener. Yeah, it's funny. When I was growing up, well, I'm going to sound like an old-timer, but there was a smoking section at high school.
Yeah, right.
Not a phone section. There was you would go across this white line, and if you were, over, I don't know, 16 or 18, I can't remember what it was, you could smoke outside of, and now we've got a phone section. So I guess
hopefully it goes that direction, right? Like hopefully.
Well, so but at the very beginning, we're admitting that it's as addicting.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, hopefully, in 10, 20 years, we'll look back on this era and say, wow, I can't believe we let those kids have those phones and have social media. I mean, what a disaster that was. And, maybe in our own little, I don't know any other schools. I know schools try to limit phones, but it's almost impossible. I actually don't know of any other schools other than ours that do that. So,
yeah, Jonathan Haidt, he's got an unfortunate sounding last name, but it's Haidt, Haidt, whatever. He's got a good little small grassroots movement trying to get schools to adopt a zero policy when it comes to phones. So,
I think
but
it's smart.
regardless, I do believe you have a great story. So let's hear about. And you can set it up a little bit if you want.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I'll give a little bit of context. I've been married 26 years now, I think, a little over 26 years. And I originally met my wife when she was a lifeguard at a camp that, in fact, you and I both worked at. I don't know, did you work at that summer? I think maybe you probably were there the summer that Kendra came. Yeah, you must have been there. Yeah.
Yep.
And so I'm working as I can't even remember what I was working at, head counselor or something there. I worked for several years at the camp. And I thought she was cute, but, she was young, honestly. She was like 18 at the time, and I was a little bit older. And so we didn't have a relationship, but we became friends, over the summer. And at the time, I wouldn't have been able to tell you this whole story that I'm going to tell you. Looking back, though, I wouldn't have been able to frame it in this way. But now, 26 years later, I look back and I say, what an amazing group of, I would call them providential happenings that required, that only would have worked without phones, I think, in order for the rest of the story to happen. So we were friends, and I was on my way. After camp, we all went back to our separate ways, and she was from Oregon. I was living in California at the time, but I grew up in Canada, and I had to make a quick trip back to Canada to take my car that I had been driving, which was a Canadian car, back to Canada and drop it off. That's another great analog story for another time, probably.
Dealing with customs.
Right. Like dealing just with things like paperwork, the way we used to do it, and the reason I had to go back to Canada is because I got stopped by a police officer and I had Canadian plates on it, and all the rest stuff that would not happen today. Like I would know whether or not my car could be driven in the U.S. now, and everything is online. Right. Anyway, I had to drive back to Canada very quickly, make a quick trip back, drop my car off, try to figure out a way back home. And so I'm on my way out of campus, and as I'm literally probably 20 yards from the leaving camp when the camp director jumps out of the little nurses station that we had there at the bottom of the camp we were working at, jumps out, grabs me as I'm driving by, says, "Hey, bye, we'll see you in a little bit." I was going to see her again. She's like, "Oh, but Kendra, the lifeguard that's here, she needs a ride back to Pleasanton." We were in the Bay Area. Would you mind taking her and dropping her off at her aunt and uncle's house in Pleasanton? I'm like, absolutely, not a problem, right? So this is what I do. Again, this is something that today, I mean, maybe that happens, but yeah, this the fact she jumped out. Everything had to be. She didn't text. She didn't call. She didn't do a group chat to figure out who can take Kendra. She saw me. We interacted physically, right? Like
Yeah,
we're talking face to face.
Yeah. I never heard this because I was probably already gone. The whole camp was gone, right?
Yeah. I think we were close to shutting the whole thing down for the summer. And so this was, I don't know, what is it, about maybe an hour drive, something like that, from the camp to Pleasanton. So Kendra jumps in, and we have a very nice time, visiting, interacting face to face, as one does when you're in the presence of someone, and it's just the two of you. And we had never really done that. It's not like, we had chatted, but we'd never really done that before. And so this hour-long drive, where again, face-to-face interaction, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I didn't think that much of it, but I really enjoyed it. And I did tell her, hey, I'm coming back down to California from Canada, and I understand you live in Oregon, Eugene, Oregon. You know what? I'll stop by and say hi if you want. That would, on my way down.
Yeah, dropping the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
Dropping the dating. You know what? Dating breadcrumbs. You could probably start a little book about. Yeah.
And I honestly don't. Thinking back again, I don't think I had that much in my mind, other than it was a nice thing to say. I was coming back down that way. I knew I was going to drive through Eugene, and so I said, "Hey, why don't I? I'll stop by if I get a chance." So drop her off. I head off to Canada. There was a bunch of other. It was a bit of a road trip coming back. It was planes, trains, and automobiles. Actually, it was planes, ferries, and automobiles coming back to Eugene. And I don't know how much detail we want to get into, but
well, I was going to tease you. I was going to tease you when you said a quick trip back to Canada. That's number one. Let's just dismiss with that word right there.
Yeah, well, true, fair enough. We used to be able to do it. We used to do San Diego back to my farm in 24 hours if both of us drove, and we did that several times. This was a little bit different than that, but it's about maybe 22, I think.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went and dropped my car off, and on the way back, I actually picked up a friend's car, and it was, another time when we might want to talk about like providential instances that affected your life, like two or big, I know actually I was almost tempted to give you the big decisions question.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't so much a big decision. And I do think that's a little bit of a different question, but there are points in life, and I don't want to focus on them too much here, but there are points in life where I look back and I say, wow, if I had missed that by just 2 minutes or 30 seconds, this whole story is different, right? Yep. And I think of that, our friend Heather, the camp director, coming out and saying, hey, can you drive Kendra to her aunt and uncle's house? Like, if she pops out of there 10 seconds later, I'm already past, like she saw me coming, and this whole story is a lot different. And
maybe she has to drive Kendra or
right.
whatever.
It's something. Yeah. It's just something's different. I just don't. The rest of the story goes differently. And there was several of these on that trip because I was supposed to meet another friend who was lending me her car up in Washington State. And in order to get to this friend who was lending me her car, I had to fly a one-way trip into Victoria and then find a way to get down to the ferry station. I had never been to Victoria, and I didn't. Again, you're not like this. These are days when you're not following your phone. You don't have a phone, right? You're just figuring it out.
So real quick, so when you went back to Canada, you had to abandon your car. You had to leave your car at home. You no longer could use your car in California.
I left it, and I had a friend of mine ended up selling it. He put it on the Auto Trader or something, and that's how. But so I didn't have a car, and I don't know. This was.
You're looking back at. I know what you're doing right now. You're looking back at your choices, and you have teenagers in the household. That's what you're thinking right now.
Well, what's interesting, you talk about pre-analog days, and I don't want to get too far afield, and maybe it was my personality too, where I was more inclined to just like, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out when we get there. We'll figure out things I don't see a lot of kids doing that these days, and I do think the way you can hyper trust technology to do stuff for you now is part of that issue. Like, I didn't when I'm in Chicago and Detroit, I don't have to figure it out. I just plug my phone tells me what to do. Okay.
Right.
This was not like that. In those days, I not only did I not know how to get anywhere, I didn't know what I was going to, how it was all going to work out, where I was going to live and drive when I got there. There was a lot of that stuff going on.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had to get over to Bremerton, Washington, and you have to take a ferry. And I remember that after I figured out, and I actually don't remember how I got from the airport to the ferry. Maybe I took a cab. I actually don't remember. But I do recall that I was within about a minute of missing that ferry once I got there, the last ferry of the day.
Yep.
But I got on it, okay? I got on it, and I got on the ferry, and it took me across over to Bremerton, and I'm not sure how my friend, I don't know, we must have used payphones at some point, maybe, or planned it ahead. I can't remember how, like pre-cell phone days, like how my friend found me at the ferry, but she did, and picked me up and lent me her car, and then I headed south. This was all in one day, by the way, right? This is all in one day. So I took off from Canada, Edmonton, flew into Victoria, grabbed a ferry, grabbed my friend's car, and started driving south because I had to be in school, by that Monday, and so I had to get down to San Jose. This is the Bay Area I was living in at the time. So I head south, and now it's getting pretty late in the day, and you head south from Bremerton.
Same day. This is
all the same day.
You left your house in
Yes.
Edmonton in the morning.
Yes,
outside of Edmonton.
That's correct. Flew out in the morning, caught the ferry, got the car. Now I'm driving south, and I remember I stopped at a payphone because I had told Kendra, and again I wasn't thinking romantically. I was just thinking like, well, I don't want to be seen as a liar. I don't want her to think that I wasn't telling her the truth when I told her that I would swing by. But now it's like 8:00 at night, and I'm, in Portland. Like I'm not even close. I'm not close. I was maybe I called her from Portland. I wonder somewhere in that area, maybe right in that, probably right in there. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to call her just so she doesn't think that I'm a liar. And I kept my word, and I assume that she'll say it's too late. And it's okay because I'm going to keep driving. I'm in Portland. It's 8:00 at night. I'm going to keep driving. Probably sleep on the side of the road somewhere. But so I stop at a payphone. I call her house, and she says, "Oh, well, why don't you stop?" I said, "Well, it's going to be 10:30 at night when I get to Eugene." "Oh yeah, it's okay," she says. And really, I found out later in her family that was absolutely not okay. All right, this was not okay. This was highly unusual. Okay, to have some guy she met at camp, stop by at 10:30 at night to say hello as he's driving through town. So I do recall because her house was not easy to find in Eugene, but she gave me directions, and I recall writing them down on the napkin in the payphone, and and I got to Eugene, and I had never really driven. Eugene's not an easy town, actually. There's a lot of weird roads. And I had to stop again. I think I had to stop again once I got there. I got somewhat close to her house, and I had to stop again saying, "Here's where I am. Am I close?" She's like, "Oh, yeah, you're almost there. Keep going." And I got there, and we went out to Allen Brothers Coffee at like 10:30 at night, and to this day, her dad must have been thinking, what the heck is going on here? But we did. So the other part of that story is Kendra was scheduled to go to Oregon State University. She was going to be a freshman that year. I was going to a school in San Jose. She did not really want to go to she didn't really want to go to Oregon State. It was just sort of a default for where. And so I knew I was going to a small Christian school, and I knew that it's not exactly hard to get into if you've got any grades at all, right? You can get into this school, and they can, if you're willing to pay, they'll let you in. And so, but it's a great school. I have nothing bad to say. I was going to this little Christian Bible school in San Jose. That's no longer there. It's now a big university elsewhere. But so I said, well, why don't you check that out? Maybe you should come down to San Jose and go to school. This was like a Thursday night, by the way. Okay, this is Thursday night.
End of summer, yeah.
End of summer, Thursday night. School starts Monday.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. This is why I'm driving back. I don't have time. I got to get home. I got to figure out. I don't even know if I knew where I was living actually at that time. It was a weird time. I might have been living at the camp. I think maybe.
Yep.
Maybe. I bet I was. I was staying at the camp. That's right. So we had a very nice time though. Like this is like coffee. Hour and a half chatting in the coffee shop. I go drop her at home. I say, hey, check out this school. Honestly, I didn't think that much about it, and I took off. Her parents have asked me about that to this, like, where did you go that night? I'm like, I slept on the road somewhere. That's what we did. I just kept driving.
Yep.
Yeah, we just kept driving until you got too tired.
Yep.
I had some coffee at like 11, so probably I napped at like 3 in the morning or something, or 4 in the morning down by Shasta or something. So then, though, Monday morning, I show up for school, and who do you think is there in the parking lot? Signing up, already signed up for classes. Kendra, they had called the next day. They had called San Jose the next day. They had signed up. Her dad had, paid the tuition to get her in there for Monday. I believe she had jumped on a bus, if I'm not mistaken. I don't quote me. I think she grabbed a bus on Sunday, went down to her aunt and uncle's house where I dropped her off originally, right?
The big circle, circle. Yep.
Where I dropped her off originally, and there she was at college on Monday morning for that year.
And how did you bump into her that morning? I know
it's
small,
a small school.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. You bumped into her. Everybody knew everybody, and there she was. And of course, I was one of the few people she knew at the college.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think I don't know. We were friends. I think we started dating maybe later maybe the spring. I actually
did you both go on to graduate from that college?
So I graduated. She was there for 2 years, and I graduated. Okay. And then that same year, the year that I graduated, we got married. So yeah, that too.
So maybe
again,
on a follow-up,
not something that people would probably do, but we. And again, I'm not necessarily recommending my life path for everyone, but the analog version of it, just to go back, like how it was before cell phones. I just think that story. So, let me finish the story. So we got married 2 years later. I transferred to graduate school actually up in Portland, and then she transferred to finish her undergrad up in Portland. Okay. And so she graduated from a school in Oregon, and then we went back to California after that. After she had graduated in Oregon, we came back, and so now we're longtime SoCal people with a few little, trips here and there. But like I said, 26. So that's 26 years ago. Wow. But I look back and I think there's no way that story happens that way if we have cell phones.
Right.
Because I wouldn't have told her. Honestly, I wouldn't have said, I'm driving back down, and I'd stop and say hello, right? Because you would just be texting. If you like the girl, you're just texting.
Yeah, at the very least, if we just allow the phone to enter into the story at a couple moments, at the very least, you would have texted, while you were on the ferry or at the airport, and said, "Hey, I might be passing through Eugene, at 9 or 10 at night." And her text back would probably be, "Oh, my parents won't allow that," or what? Or yeah. I don't know, but if some things are, we try to overly plan, they fall apart. They don't work.
Yeah, I think I just don't. I don't know that I would have. Not to get too, to guess too much, right, about how history would have been reinvented, but I think the whole story would have been different in a digital age, right? Yeah. Like you wouldn't. Maybe I drive her and drop her.
Sure.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And if we're friends today, I just think you keep texting then. But I actually probably wouldn't. I probably wouldn't text today because, well, I don't know. I just think in those, I was, because I was kind of older. I'm like mid-20s. It would maybe be a little bit, I don't know. I'm not sure. But if we did have interest, there would definitely just be more of an ongoing texting relationship rather than me going out of my way and stopping. Like, I don't think that we would value the chance to go face to face, have coffee with someone.
Well, and the real bummer, and unfortunately the pandemic just gave everybody the license to do this. I hope not forever, but I think for a whole generation. One thing that texting does is it gives you the opportunity for positives and negatives. So you can say, hey, I'm running 10 minutes late. If you're waiting for someone at the movie theater, you can say, and this would have saved, I've got stories about, people waiting outside the theater when there was a big group inside. Oh, I didn't know you were inside. Okay. But so there's positives, but the negative is that I've noticed an insane amount of people, an insane amount of times where just the fact that the text is there sitting on the phone provides an opportunity for someone to second guess the event or the meeting or the coffee or whatever. And unfortunately the pandemic gave everyone I've got a slight cough. Okay, well then we're just, I can't go. But there's so many plans that have been, people just say no now at the last minute when that wasn't a possibility for her or for you. I mean,
and let me add another thing on there. Without the texting, you don't have the ability to do all of the weird relational interaction that happens via text that's often very negative. Just going to add what you say, but just relational wise, right? Yeah. A texting relationship is different than a face-to-face relationship. To give a more extreme example, like people who post things on Twitter or X or whatever it is now, right? They say things differently than they do face to face. In fact, I knew a sports reporter who would back in the early days of online forums and stuff, when people would, I didn't know him personally, but I knew that this guy would do this. People would post bad things about him, and he would figure out their phone number and give them a call and ask them, just ask them, what were you talking about there? And inevitably, 99% of the time, they're like, oh, dude, I'm sorry. I mean, I didn't mean anything by it. I wouldn't, if we were talking face to face, we'd have a beer or whatever. I mean, I'm just posting crap, I'm not that kind of, it's a different thing. And texting, I did this the other day. I was texting somebody that I don't text that often, and we kind of know each other, but not that much. And I was really struggling with how it was going to be received. Do I put an exclamation point there? I don't know. How do I phrase the sentence? I'm not sure.
Yes.
How I don't want you to think I'm weird, but I'm literally not sure how to. Is this too stuffy? And it's just such a weird thing, right? And I do think relationships get tweaked that way, where if it's only texting all the time, that's not you.
No.
And so for Kendra and I, because we didn't have the ability to text, right? Isn't that interesting? I drove with her, I hung out with her working, which was huge, by the way.
Right.
Which was huge. To actually see her lifeguard, it was absolutely, I can envision very clearly the first time I thought, wow, that's an attractive woman. And it wasn't the way she looked. It was how she was interacting with the little kids.
Yeah.
Okay, she's awesome with kids. And by the way, boys and girls, that is the number one trait you want in a mate. Okay, how are they with kids? Absolutely, the most attractive, the most important thing. You're are you a good parent? And that was very and I didn't, I wasn't thinking philosophically about that, but she's really good with kids, and she was cute, of course, too, which is not a bad thing. But I absolutely remember the first thing I was attracted to was how great she was with kids, and so I see that. How are you going to see that over texting? You're not going to see that over texting, right? And then we spend time together and we're chatting and it's face-to-face and being in person. I mean, hopefully the pandemic taught us all that too, that being in the physical presence of somebody is incredibly important for teaching, for interaction, for parenting. You can't do it online. Forget about it, okay? It's not going to happen. And so then we have that physical interaction. Then I talked to her a few times on the phone, which again is very different than texting. Much better, I would say. And I'm a guy who I don't talk to people on the phone anymore. But really, if I'm being honest, absolutely it's better than
Yeah.
texting, right? Absolutely. And then we go and have coffee, and then we get to spend time together at school as students. And again, it's not, and that's nice too, by the way. Just as something else that kids are bereft of is having a break from people. So we'd meet at school, right? Maybe we'd go out for Taco Bell or something after, or I don't know. That's about what I was. We weren't going out anywhere else. Actually, I know where we would go. We'd go to Mr. Chang's Chinese fast food back in the day. That's exactly. And
Chinese fast food.
Absolutely, in San Jose. And so, but that was it. But then you drop her at the dorm, and I'd go back to live at camp, and we'd talk again tomorrow. That's actually kind of nice. Right,
Yeah.
in an early stages of the relationship where I don't have to be like, oh, she hasn't texted me for an hour, or she didn't say, did you get home safely, or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, for kids today, the social media stuff and the ability they're 100% always available to everybody else. And they're always that pressure of always being available, like, oh, she wants to FaceTime and he's texting and he didn't return my text and your tone. It's very pressure inducing to these kids, and that just really hurts, I think, relationships. So pre-analog, no, all of our growing, all of our learning is face to face, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's incredibly helpful for so you're not completely, can you imagine moving in with somebody? And don't move in with somebody and think that's good. But after you have really only interacted via text and online, and then suddenly you're living with this person, like,
And then wondering why it's different.
Why are
or
you
something.
crazy? Yeah. Exactly. Like, why are you crazy? Well, you don't know the person. Like, the texting person is not the same person, right?
Yeah.
I just think it's such a.
Well, I'd like to hear, and maybe we'll do it for a follow-up episode. I would love to hear Kendra's side of that story, the exact same story, but hers from her standpoint. Because again, and we'll wrap up pretty soon here, but I'm thinking at the minimum, if she was going to ride with a strange guy, now strange guy, I'm couching with the fact that you've worked together all summer, but the odds are today, even if that ride still happens, at the minimum, she texts her parents and says, hey, is it okay if so-and-so, this guy, gives me a ride to my aunt and uncle's house? I mean, there's so much, safetyism, safety monitoring the level of risk at every stage in life. And it's like, I did hear, I don't want to overly share him, but I think that Jonathan Haidt guy, I thought that I heard a podcast within the last month about when we don't allow young kids to have healthy amounts of risk, then when they get as an adults, that's a skill that they just have not learned at all. So like letting your kid walk down the street, let's say even in a digital age today, in the 80s, basically what everyone's admitting now was yes, there were a few child abductions that got on the news, but the stats really show that child abductions were lower than the news was sharing. What that did is it got a lot of people, and Gen X is responsible because we're the parents, to overly shadow their kids at every step of the way. And even like letting your kid walk 2 blocks or 4 blocks to their friend's house, even just that walk today can be helpful just to allow a little bit of freedom at that age. And I know that everyone freaks out when they hear that. Oh my gosh, I'm not going to let them walk down the street. Well, you know what? What about when they wind up in Chicago and their card doesn't work and they're at a rental car agency at 11 at night? What are they going to do?
Yes. No, this is exactly, I couldn't agree more, that life is about the unexpected and taking risks, and you don't know how it's going to turn out. And I mean, road trips are absolutely fantastic for this. I recall going on, in fact, one that you were on, Alden, just because, a quick little story about this. This happens all the time, right? When you're traveling, crazy stuff happens. It's just, The last time, I don't know, we've been in Chicago a few times recently, but one of our recent trips together, I had my son with me, right, if you recall, in Chicago.
Oh, yes, that's right. I forgot. Yep.
Yeah. And on our way home from that trip, and we had gone, I think we left you in Chicago, we went out to North Carolina, and then we were trying to get home, if I recall. We made a few stops and really a fun time, but we're trying to get home for Halloween, if I recall. I think it was Halloween. And this was it Halloween last year or the year before when everything went crazy with the airlines? And we ended up getting stranded a couple of different times. Like we got stopped, we got delayed, and then we got stranded, and then we ended up in Phoenix. And that was it. We were stuck in Phoenix, and I just recall looking around at how people were interacting. And even my son, he's like, "Dad, this is bad, right? This is bad." And I'm like, "Well, I mean, no, it's a pain. It's
We'll
a pain.
figure something out. Yeah.
Yeah, but and I think, I mean, so what we had to do is we had to rent a car to drive home from Phoenix. Thankfully, we were within 7 hours. So I'm like, yeah, that's close enough. Let's go get a car.
Yeah.
We'll be home. We'll be home in time to trick or treat. We might be a little bit late.
Oh. First you bump me, then you delay me. I can't wait to see what you're going to do next.
Well, by that time in the trip, I mean, I think we were supposed to be home Saturday morning or Friday night, and now it's Sunday afternoon, and we're trying to get home.
Oh my God.
It was one of those, but whatever,
Yeah.
you figure it out. But I do think, like, all of these years that I've been doing this, I mean, it was like, no, son, it's okay. What I am going to do, though, and here's where the technology helped me out on that day. While everyone else was running to, not everybody was, but several people, like some were frozen. Like, I guess we're here till Wednesday. Many of us were running to the rental car section, right?
Yeah.
But what I was doing was, while we're running, I was reserving my car online. So I will give the phone that much credit, okay?
Yes. Yeah.
So by the time we arrived there, I had booked the last of the rental cars
Oh my gosh.
on my phone. So, full circle again, I'm not a Luddite. I'll use the tech.
Yeah.
We need to recognize, like, when when it's good and when it's bad. The phones and the stuff can be great. I mean, I was just sharing you yesterday about so when I get home from these trips after I've done these interviews, the first thing I do is transcribe the interview. So I work from a text, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to scrub through each video each time trying to remember where he or she said this. I work from a
Yeah.
text. So often, but in the old days, that would take me days and days of just, like, hour by hour. Here you've got hours and hours of footage. And for several days, I mean, if it's a big project, that might be the first 6 weeks. Like, all you're doing
Yeah.
is transcribing. If
Yep.
I've got, some of these movies we've done, I got 22 videos, 22 interviews, an hour each,
Right.
typing all those out. And then if I felt like I had time, maybe you would ship those off online and pay somebody, a couple bucks
Yep.
a minute, but that gets expensive.
Yep.
Now, with the tech, in fact, the service we use to record this podcast, they offer for free AI transcribing that does that in about 45 seconds. What used to take me easily a day for one video, they do perfectly in 45 seconds for free.
Wow.
And so I'm like, well, hey,
Ugh.
technology goes forward and backward, and somebody's out of a job now who used to
Yeah.
do that, and it's not like I'm doing less work. I'm just doing different work, right? Like, you just, okay, now
That's what I was going to say, and maybe I can add this to my 5 questions, or 7 or 8, whatever they are. Is, what are you doing now with all that time that you're saying?
Well, I told my kids we were doing a section on, we're teaching U.S. history and the effects of technology, and I'm like, listen, people don't work less, they just do different work. So it's not like that used to take me 2 days. Now I just got it done in a minute.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? Am I going to go relax for the next 2 days? No, I'm moving on to the next thing.
Pile on more.
Yeah, totally. I'm moving on to the next stage of the project. Maybe I get the project done faster. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So that part's good, but it's not like you're just doing anyway.
The AI stuff is a whole separate. I mean, we're now at the cusp of basically we're at the cusp of another, the equivalent of the social media stuff, but now at least maybe we're thinking about it more. I don't say we're going to stop it at all. We're at least considering the impact. I don't know what that will mean other than, that's a whole nother.
Hopefully it does not mean, and this I've seen a few times, just to sort of bring it back to relationships. Hopefully it won't mean people using AI to for their relationships, which I have seen advertised quite often. Oh, your AI friend now. You're kind of like, no, okay. Human beings are human beings. Go spend some time face to face.
Yeah, I think I do think there are a few positives that I don't know that anyone at a large scale of amount of people under the age of 25 is really embracing, living in the metaverse and creating a person that is. I mean, it's literally you're talking about people passing time while they're at school or work. That's what these things so far seem to me to be. They don't have any ability to actually replace, and I don't know if that gives me comfort or disappointment that we keep pushing them.
Well, yeah. I mean, I do think there is a backlash on several levels, I think, among the youth who are, if we can get enough of them pulled out of that digital swamp, that they are actually quite adept at seeing some of the follies of the boomers, the Xers, the millennials. Yep. Like, we've done a lot of stupid things, and some of them are obvious, to that younger generation. Like, they're like, nah, there's a traditionalist movement, actually, in many areas of life among the kids where, no, I don't want, something even like seemingly small, although I don't think it's small. Like, no, I don't want to see a big video screen when I go to church, for example.
Right.
No, I don't. What do you mean, videos? No. No, I'm sick of the video screens.
Right.
I see video screens everywhere all day. When I go to church, I want to interact with people, and I want to interact with the divine. Give me an experience of the divine. Don't give me your digital nonsense. That to me is a favorable trend.
Yeah, no, that's true. When we were down in LA recently for Christmas with my mom, we went to a Christmas Eve service at my old large LA church, which I thought my mom would love, and and we go in, and the pastor has the flu, and the associate pastor has COVID, and we watched his message on a video screen, and I said, I thought we were going to have the big hallelujah choir and the whole thing, and my mom still really enjoyed it. It was a great time. It was, the quality of everything was great, but I just thought, oh no, I think we left 5 minutes early, and we just hit the road and had a great road trip home.
Yeah, no, I do think that's a really clear image of where the digital age just really falls short, is so there's almost levels. So ideally you're there with the pastor and the choir and everybody's physically present. One step removed, at least you're with other people, even if we are watching a screen.
And we're singing together,
Yeah, I mean, at least there's that. I mean, one step behind that would be everybody at home watching it on TV. Right. Like, what a disaster that is. I mean, nobody wants that's a waste complete waste of time. Which is what COVID, no, just stay home. No, okay,
right. No. Stay home and watch some soap operas or sitcoms when you're sick. Okay, maybe, but no, you're not gonna get the learning and education. But
you can't do church, you can't do school. There's just things you can't, you can't build a relationship and fall in love with somebody.
Right. So as we wrap up,
that's where we started.
Yes. As we wrapped up, I'm a philosopher, and I'm not going to be this is not going to be an instructional podcast, I don't think, but as you wrap up and think about your story, one question I had for you that I thought was maybe interesting is that just came up now today is knowing what we know about technology and how I don't want to say married, but just how normal your kids are. How do your kids respond to this story? And are they able to embrace that or appreciate that risk, or no? Does it just doesn't? It's like a different language.
In many ways,
Because I'm sure they've heard the story.
Yeah, they've heard the story, and they live with their mother and I, and a big part of our life has been road trips. We try to get a couple in every year at least.
Yeah.
Because of what they do, and listen, the best stories come from those road trips. Because they're adventures. So I don't know. I do think they get it at least a bit, and we don't. And I've become stronger on this as the kids have grown up. So we were, you learn as you parent. But like my youngest, good luck you ever getting a phone, kiddo. Sorry about that. The age keeps going up. Sometimes you get more lenient with some of these things, which some things you do get more lenient with the younger kids. With the phones, I've become stricter. You're not, no. Because here's the other thing I've known. Hopefully, yes, the kids have sort of imbibed that adventurous, go and experience things and take a risk.
Yeah.
They see the difference. You go to Cars Land at Disneyland, and hey, I don't mind Disneyland. People, but listen, go out to Monument Valley and tell me that there's really
a difference.
Right? Okay. Go to Monument Valley, and if you can start to see why Disneyland is okay, but it's a facsimile of the real thing.
Right.
That's all it is.
Right.
And the real thing is so much better.
Right.
And so much of, if you can see that through all of life, your digital relationships, your texting, it's a little bit, it's not that it's not real, but it's a shadow of the real thing. And the real thing is flesh and blood, people being together. And so, I do think about that, and I do try to, for example, our evening meal, everybody's always in person around a table. If we can. Sometimes people are doing stuff. I am surprised at how few families do that anymore.
Yeah.
That they're just, I don't know, we just eat whenever and we're off doing stuff, and they don't spend, the physical unit, I do think we have tried. But on the other hand, I have been frankly amazed at how much the attitude of the culture just seeps in anyway. It's just the air they breathe. That sort of digital. You mean even safety?
Even if a kid didn't have a phone, they would still some of the phone isms or the effects of it are
the
still
culture.
Seep in. Yeah.
That idea of the digital culture is such that it is changing the way we think and live and breathe by its nature, and there's been some good, tech writers on this over the years, right? They have warned about this, that it's not so much, what's the technology doing, what is it, so it provides me a transcript in 40 seconds, yes. Right. Not so much that as how is it making you rethink the world and see the world differently and interact with people differently. So, I think hopefully my kids, but we've thought about that, right? We've tried to. Well, but it's still hard. It's still hard, I think.
Yeah. Well, there's two things that I'll leave you with, and then we really will wrap up. Fun. It is. There is a nod to Plato's cave there that you were just alluding to. Yes. That's a good opportunity to have the Plato's cave be a little road trip lesson or story if you're on. But then I just thought of something fun. What if the next time you go on a road trip, just for fun? Again, you can't go back in time, but what if you just, occasionally send your kids into the gas station at the front, have them buy a bottle of water or whatever they're buying, and ask them for directions somewhere. Just say, hey, ask that guy if he knows how far it is to Bryce. Is this we're on our way to Zion. How far to Bryce? And
that's an actual real world example. But it's not even just ask for directions, although that's a great one. But I have found, and I don't think it's just my kids, but people are very hesitant to go even interact with the cashier at all. Like people are very, like, okay, I'll go pay but what if, can't we just order online and pick it up without actually interacting?
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's the way people are very much that's what I'm saying with the tech.
Yeah.
Like you order your Starbucks,
Right.
you order your Starbucks mobile, it's there waiting on the thing when you get there.
Right. You pick it up, you go.
Why? What's with the drive-through lines?
Oh my
I mean, I get
gosh.
it, but what? I'm like, just walk in. It's nobody's in line walking in.
Right.
Yet the drive-through line goes for 2 miles.
Yeah.
What are you doing? I do think we have to really focus, and I've noticed this. Like, yeah, we make our kids like, no, you go ask that guy. Go buy. You go buy the bottle of water. No,
Right.
I don't want to. No, you go.
You go. Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not saying we've made so many mistakes. It's not like we're doing great at this, but these are the kind of things I think we do think about raising kids in a digital age. Is that, man, yes, the maps are nice, but that adventure, we've lost a little bit of that risk taking and that adventure.
Well, and I wonder if, again, because you're not a Luddite, we're not going to remove ourselves. We know we're not. We can, I think in the early ages, people talked about different things, and we're not going to remove ourselves from all this. It's just, there's too many things that we're connected to and have to be. But I wonder if the road trip is a good little small area where you can try out some of these low-level risks. Just the road trip setting might be, because then psychologically they associate a road trip with, I might have an awkward conversation, but I also might have a funny story when I get back to the van.
And we always do, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Like, yes, I understand it's our personality. Thankfully, my wife and I both love to road trip, and we like to hike. And hike is like a mini little road trip, which I also encourage people, if you're looking for that sense of adventure, and not knowing what's around the next corner and how to tackle. I honestly can't think of much that we've done better than to get our kids out into national parks and hiking, because it's the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
but there's snow there. Yeah. Yeah, we got to get over it. How are we going to do it?
Right.
Right? Like, how are we going to do it?
Right.
Well, what do you mean? Let's go. We got to get to there. And obviously you don't want to be stupid with your risks, but but there is a certain amount of life is, you can't control it all the time.
Life is risk. And but the idea of risk in general, life is risk. And when you go to a national park, if you want to hike up, there's a high probability that if you take your kids up Half Dome, that might be more risk than they've ever seen on any show they've ever watched, trying to navigate the cables and the waterfalls. And is there danger? Yes. Are there people that step over the rail and fall off Nevada Falls? Yes. And you don't want to overly be a daredevil, but they've got to understand what, where the limits are. And
I think that the interaction with reality it seems overly simplistic, but going out, drive to a national park or wherever, right? There's plenty. Go for a hike in the outdoors and interact with reality is the antidote to the digital age. One antidote.
One of
okay,
them,
it's not the, but one, because the digital life is not complete, right? It's a shadow life. It's very much Plato's cave. Like we have a generation that's growing up thinking that their video game is reality. No, that's a shadow of the reality.
Yeah, it's a Plato's cave generation, maybe. I don't know. Thank you for this, for that story. I'm glad that you chose that one. And I think a good place to leave this is we will get your wife on a future episode, and we're going to have her.
She can rebut all of my points.
That's right.
No, I wasn't attracted to that guy at all. I mean, I told my dad, this guy's an idiot.
She's gonna say, oh, my sister was like, what are you, crazy? You're not going to go meet this guy at 10:30 for coffee.
Killer. Totally.
Because what I do want, and it's a good, I like leaving things undone, which is another modern thing that people don't like to do. But I wonder her conversation with her parents about college that next morning. That's what I want to know.
Yeah. No, true.
So, well, that's a good place to leave it.
Great to talk to you, Alden.
Thank you for episode number 1, and we'll see you on the next road trip.
Sounds good.